We've learned Twitter has suspended 125,000 ISIS-related accounts since the middle of last year for threatening or promoting terrorist acts. Foreign Affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan is at the White House now. I mean, this is a big deal. How instrumental is this in the White House push against ISIS?
Well, this is the very first time that Twitter has publicly acknowledged that it is sorting through all the communication on Twitter to weed out accounts that are related to terrorism, specifically and mainly ISIS. 125 accounts since the middle of 2015. This announcement by Twitter, they say they've been doing this quietly, but this announcement comes after cabinet-level officials from the Obama administration just weeks ago flew across the country to sit down with leaders in Silicon Valley and simply to ask for help, to explain that this is not just a matter of freedom of speech from the position of the intelligence community. This is also a matter of national security, and they're trying to get private companies like Twitter, like Facebook, like other messaging apps to look at what's happening on the platforms that they provide, because they do know that terrorists are using this as a matter of communication to recruit and to plan attacks.
Well, so clearly if Twitter has been doing this since last summer, it predates that visit by the White House to Silicon Valley. And you mentioned the other apps. I mean, after the Paris attacks, there was a lot of attention focused on the potential for terrorists to use so-called dark apps, these user-to-user encrypted apps that nobody can spy on, including the companies that manufacture or invent the apps themselves.
Well, that issue of encryption that you're referring to, Apple has taken a very strong stance on. Their CEO, Tim Cook, saying, look, if we open a back door for the government, other sort of users with ill intent can also get into the system, and that's a dangerous sort of sliding scale, slippery slope to allow to begin to develop. On this issue of these communication platforms like Twitter and Facebook, they said they've started, sometimes before the government asked them to look at what's happening online. Remember, many of them already police child porn and try to create algorithms to search that out and shut down accounts that are doing things that are illegal. The issue with this specifically with terrorism is so complicated, because what constitutes freedom of speech? If you want to say you agree with some of what ISIS is putting out there, who determines whether or not that makes you one of the candidates who should have their account shut down? This is a really interesting position for a private company to be in, particularly a publicly traded one like Twitter. And it's a conversation that Silicon Valley has said they're not really that comfortable with. They want to maintain some control over this, but they're under a lot of pressure, not only from the United States, but from the French government, from the Australians, from the UK government, who see this as something that they can't quite control. It's also interesting because some intelligence analysts say they like being able to watch some of this to know what terrorists are doing. So it's an interesting thing, but this announcement by Twitter today is clearly a response to the public pressure. For them to publicly acknowledge they're doing this shows that they are feeling a lot of scrutiny.
Is Twitter worried at all about a security backlash by ISIS or ISIS supporters?
I haven't heard them say that, but clearly you have seen, some of their accounts and issues in the past few months say they're trying to make themselves immune to anything like that. But what you are, sorry, it's getting a little windy here at the White House, Contessa. But what you are seeing from Twitter here is this response to public pressure. And I would expect other technology firms to also be saying things publicly. WhatsApp is a messaging app used oftentimes by people completely legally for good reasons overseas, but they've also seen terrorists use WhatsApp as a way to evade law enforcement. That company is owned by Facebook. There are other apps, Kik, others that haven't made this public pronouncement yet, so I would watch and see what else you hear.